FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. And, well, you haven't heard from this person in a while, and you'll understand the reasons why very shortly. His podcast on iTunes was one of the things that got me into podcasting. The name of the show, well, it used to be called the Value Line Stock Show, and now it's the Value Guys Stock Show. Do I have that right?
Well, there's a story there, Kerry, in that it was the Value Line Observer with Val Hughes and Vern Value. And then and we would go through the Value Line each week, and we got sued by Value Line. And there's actually a show with me ranting about it.
I remember it.
Encouraging everyone to cancel their Value Line subscription. But I got over it. Over it. But we changed the name of the show to the Value Guys Stock Talk Show, and that seems to work pretty well. So
that's great. Well, so I've been listening to you for over 10 years from before I started podcasting. You took a break because basically Wall Street became just a question of just buy this and hold it and things get better. And then eventually, if you don't sell it, it crashes and then you lose money. But it was this whole passive investing fad, and that seems to be behind us. And I should introduce you. It is Mr. Val Hughes. And
thank you, Kerry.
And it's the Value Guys Stock Talk Show. And you just did your first comeback episode, I guess about a week ago.
We've done 2 now, and we've had a lot of longtime listeners. So to the extent they're listening to this, thank you very much. But the show is largely true. We're Wall Street analysts, and I've been managing money for about 20 years now. But we dig in, and we meet with CEOs, we do models. And the show really grew out of stuff we were doing anyway with younger colleagues, holding court at the bar, drinking beer. And so the caveat that we're heavily drinking, I mean, it's not always true. Sometimes we're just modestly drinking, but, and it just grew into the show. We've had a lot of fun. The last couple of years, for all those years of the show, I had a small partnership, and I was the chief compliance officer. So I approved the show, as you might imagine. But in the last few years, I've been at another partnership, and we just wanted to get on solid footing there before we started, bothering the compliance department with the notion of the show. So we've kind of passed that period, and we're off back to doing the show. I dragged Mo out of retirement. He's on a
Momentum.
Somewhere.
That's your partner, Momentum.
Val
right?
Hughes. Now, Momentum and Val Hughes. We just did this nice show on the difference between earnings and price to earnings ratios. And so we kind of embody, and it's true, I was always more of a let's get the earnings estimate right kind of a guy. And Mo was always the let's get the story part right. I mean, he and I worked together literally 40 years ago in our first jobs. We've been friends all these years, but we always took these different corners of the valuation. Earnings times the price earnings is the price. And it takes 2 guys to understand each one. And that, in effect, is what the show's about. I'm taking the earnings point of view. He's taking the momentum, the price earnings ratio point of view. But we are drinking, and it's a lot of fun. So we've been doing that a long time.
Yeah. So, and your disclosures for the show are rather unique. Could you just go over your disclosure policy?
Well, let's see. We are professional Wall Street analysts during the week. We do careful modeling. We interview management teams. We project earnings. And we are very careful to do absolutely none of that on the show. In fact, our interests are opposed to yours, and we are just have our own greedy interests in mind. That's kind of our disclosure. And what we've learned is that gets us through the compliance department. We've pretty well indicated that it's for entertainment purposes only. The other disclosures that we like are, and we enjoy having fun. I mean, we're laughing along with the audience, but this show is for entertainment purposes only. And you hear that on a lot of shows. They'll say that. But I just go on to be a little more truthful, which is, and that's not a guarantee. Like we hope we're entertaining, but we may not be. But at the core, what we really hope our listeners get from the show is maybe a few laughs, but we're really about educating people about investing. We are what we say. We're longtime Wall Street analysts. If we don't get the value of stocks right, we're fired. And we've been doing this 40 years. So we were 40 years of not getting fired. And we've had long careers. We've been in the room with the decision makers. We've been on the other side with the investors. So it brings a nice perspective, particularly to younger folks who are trying to understand Wall Street. It seems very confusing from the outside, and it is from the inside, but it's somewhat less confusing from the inside. So we're just trying to bring a little fun to a very serious topic. And we give, I think, 2 or 3 pretty serious stock ideas every week. And that's really the core of the educational part of the show. And then we have a few laughs as well.
Well, you left out the most important disclosure, though.
Uh-oh. I hope I'm not in trouble for that.
The most important. You've been drinking.
Well, that's absolutely the case. We have been. I've been drinking now, Kerry, just so you know.
I thought you were slurring a little bit there.
No. Well, that's just our new Zoom connection, perhaps. But
okay. Blame it on Zoom.
We try to do the show late in the day so that we can be heavily drinking, or truthfully, modestly drinking. We used to try to do the show. We had a period where we were doing the show in the morning. And much as we would like people to believe that we're, heavily drinking, but we don't heavily drink in the morning. And the shows were just not as good. Right. And then on the other hand, I had my wife reviewing many of the shows before we put them out. And there are a few, Kerry, that are still in the skunk works that she said we were heavily drinking a little too much. And those shows didn't make it onto the air.
Oops. Oops. Yeah, you don't want to go too much.
I will say I'm proud of the fact that over so many years, we've had a lot of listeners write in about how we've helped them with their investments. We've helped them because it can be very confusing depending on who you listen to. And so at the core, we're hoping that if you listen to a lot of shows, you take away some tools that will help you really do this yourself. I don't know what Pixar is working on right now. They have this Ratatouille movie where you can really cook for yourself. I think they should have one about investing because you really can do it yourself. And we've got 300 shows out there. There's a lot of shows every week from the 07, 08, 09 period. It's really a lesson in how to navigate because we came out of that really well in terms of performance. So, but if we have new listeners and they'd like to write in and talk about what, they'd be interested in, we're happy to address that as well. We just had a call in or write in last week. We're the value guys. We had a listener call and write in and say, well, what about growth? And
what about growth?
Well, we're not the growth guys, but value and growth are not necessarily different things. We like to buy growth companies, but we just don't want to pay too much. And so you want to pay a good value, you want a good valuation, but you also want growth. And one of the secrets that we've enjoyed over our years of investing, and listeners will see this in the recommendations we make, is companies that grow in the sense they're gaining share of the economy, their industries are gaining share of the economy, they're gaining share within their industry, but there's been a mistake. There's been a disappointment that Wall Street doesn't understand. Is it a permanent mistake? Right. If it is, we need to bring down the stock a lot because now they're not going to do what we'd hope. Or is it just a temporary mistake? That ad campaign didn't work. That mailing didn't work. That product didn't work. And when you can look at things in terms of a 1 or 2 quarter mistake, the valuation is still intact, but Wall Street might have made a short-term judgment that's incorrect. That's what we're looking for all the time. And, this current period is an example of that. Going into it, a lot of big negative comparisons on revenues and earnings, and it's all about, is it permanent or is it temporary? As it's turned out, people now have come to the view it's a little bit more likely to be temporary. So you see the market recovering quickly as you realize it's a short-term rather than long-term problem. And that's the whole intersection where we find opportunity for our investors, is a misperception about a long-term problem versus a short-term problem. That's our whole research effort right there.
And one of the stocks, having had the legal bent, I liked patent trolling cases where I'd see a case where a company won a huge patent and then it would be up on appeal. And it was really hard to turn, at least a while ago, it was really hard ever come back and actually win the appeal. Your odds were really minimal. And having that little knowledge, that little advantage, really made me some major money. At least for me.
Yes.
Over the years.
I think you've nailed it. I mean, Wall Street works the same way. They teach efficient markets in school that all the knowledge is absorbed in the current prices. But, there's a great tool. It's called seekingalpha.com. It's free.
Yes.
They're not paying me. But in there, you can actually see how many analysts are covering stocks. You can see the management teams answering questions from these analysts. And as a person that knows how to read, you can go in and make your own judgment as to whether what the management team is saying and what the analyst is asking makes any sense. And for some of the companies I own, there's only one analyst or two analysts on the call, so people aren't aware. And that's where you can sometimes pick up value. Just like you're saying, Kerry, you have a little nugget that people aren't paying attention to. And if you're simply patient, eventually other people will learn about it. And what really ends up driving the value up is more demand, like at an auction.
Right.
Picture yourself holding a ticket up in a parking lot for a Rolling Stones concert. Or for listeners, it might be, who knows, the Backstreet Boys. I'm a little out of touch.
You're
but,
a little bit.
The more people that are in that parking lot with your same exact ticket, you can imagine more bidders, the value going up. The stock market works the same way. So by buying something when people aren't that interested in it, or when you've done homework more quickly than other people, then the key to some of this is patience. Sometimes the right thing to do once you have your position is do nothing and let the rest of the investment community come to the knowledge that you've got early. And then the value will go up naturally as the demand goes up, just like your ticket in the parking lot. As more people drive into that same parking lot, you can imagine how the ticket value gets bid up. And that's a little bit at the heart of how we uncover a good value. The listeners that have written in over the years, the ones that have done well, they're primarily thanking me and Mo and our team for encouraging them to stay in. This is not a trading game. When we recommend stocks, own them for 3 years is kind of the caveat. Maybe we'll start saying it's not a trader's type of game at all. There's a lot of noise in the market. So when you learn something that you think other people don't know, it could take 2 or 3 years for the true value of that to unfold. And in the meantime, it's moving around because of things that probably aren't as important in the long term. So the key ingredient, in my opinion, and you just said it well about the patent cases, is patience. My guess is it took a while for some of those to unfold.
Year and a half, 2 years sometimes.
Yeah.
But then, you make triple, double, quadruple, and it works. It definitely works. So patience, but you also have to know when to hold and when to fold, right?
Well, yes. And, we keep a database of our best estimate of the value of the company as if we were private equity investors. And interestingly, I'm now at a private equity firm and doing the public equity piece of it. But you got to understand what the value is. Pretend there's no stock market for a minute. Ultimately, if you want to go private, you'll have no stock market. So the stock market, all it does is it doesn't create or detract from value of businesses. It simply adds a layer of liquidity. It gives you liquidity, so it lets you sell today. But if you can sell over generations or over when you own a little company that makes heaters in northern Michigan, that's a good business. And it doesn't matter what the stock market does. If the stock market's down, don't sell. If it's up, sell. But if you have good businesses that have demand, you can really ignore the stock market pretty much. And you just wait till people get overly excited about your little niche. Just for example, in the shop, and I've talked about this on the show, we've owned pizza companies for a long time in one way or another, ingredients, because it's cheap, fast food. And in this pandemic, these delivery companies did very well.
Oh, yeah.
Pizza has been a long-term holding because it's cheap and fast, and we just benefited a bit here in the pandemic, which wouldn't have happened had we been short-term traders. We wouldn't have necessarily owned that. So the longer you own things, the more opportunity you have for good luck to work in your favor as well. So it's I think that's the best advice I have is patience and understand what you think the value of your company is, and that'll keep you in for the long term.
All right. So the show, you're quite irreverent, and I find it funny as hell. And especially after a long week, sit back and listen to you guys banter back and forth. It's it's quite amusing.
Well, we have so much fun. That's it. We've known each other a long time. Mo and I have been making each other laugh a long time. So it's as much for our fun as the listeners. I'm just glad people like it. It's satisfying. And just so that we feel like we're really giving back, because as we say, it may not be entertaining. We really try to have an educational core. Mo and I have had, successful careers on Wall Street. There's a lot of folks that would like to maybe learn about that. When I go and listen to what other people are saying on podcasts or books that are out there, it really is still a little bit of a mystery for what's going on in there. And, Mo and I do know what is going on in there. So we want to give back, but we like having fun too. Again, that show really started as hanging out at a bar Fridays, and hopefully it still feels a little bit like that.
And you've been doing this since 2005, which makes you a pioneer in podcasting.
Yeah. And we've had our little breaks. Some of the value guys have moved away and technology is always not available. But frankly, I dragged Mo out of retirement. I feel good about my compliance department. And, the technology, even this interview we're doing, Kerry, the ability to have remote members of a talk show or a chorus, for that matter, have really improved a lot. So, but we have been doing this. I would encourage people to go listen to the old shows. I mean, it's starting to be a long time ago. You were just telling me how we're still in the Stone Age on how we even produce the show.
Yeah, a little bit, just a little. But
yeah, well, but I think at this point, it's a ton of fun. I really appreciate your support over the years, Kerry. We go back a long ways ourselves now.
yes.
And so, anytime you want to do this or you want to have a call in or something, people might have questions for Mo and Val. We'd be happy to do that through your network. We don't have we're not really radio people. Obviously, we're investment people. So we'd be happy to do that and, encourage people to listen in. It's been fun.
I gotcha. So, yeah. And looking ahead here, I think you mentioned to me podcasting, radio, it's something you can do for the rest of your life. Even if the young ones finally push you out the door and out of Wall Street.
Well, it's a contact sport on Wall Street. And, one of the things that attracted me to it as a young man was simply that it's merit-based. If you're doing the business, you're in. If you're putting up the numbers, you're in. There's not a lot of coddling. A lot of the last time you talk to people is hearing them say you're fired. And, that happens more on Wall Street than anywhere else. I think it's like a sport, maybe athletics, money, sports for money, certainly. So we've really been doing this a long time. And I think that the fact that Mo and I have hung on, but our time is coming, Kerry. So we know that one way we can always give back is just educating through these shows. Thanks to Mo's success, we can afford better and better liquor now down in his
That's
place.
important.
Yeah. And so who knows? Maybe the shows will get better as Mo's bar stock gets better. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, you can never underestimate the value of good liquor, of fine alcohol.
And we really don't.
Definitely not. But, pretty interesting that we go from one moment where you have no ability to really get your voice heard. And then the next day, we're in the world of podcasting and millions of people.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Arcana Corporation is on the verge of bringing the world's highest grade silver mine into production. The Revenue Virginius mine in Colorado has proven improbable silver reserves grading nearly 37 ounces per ton silver with an all-in sustaining production cost of only US $8 per ounce of silver. The mine is fully permitted with infrastructure already in place, and the company has announced they plan to commence production in 2020. Achieving successful production usually results in a significant upward share price re-rating on the Lassonde curve. Arcana trades under the ticker AUN in Toronto and AUNFF in New York. To learn more, go to arcana.com. That's AURCANA.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
It's fascinating, really, the technology. And the thing that spawned the show was just listening to Steve Jobs. I mean, the very term podcasting comes from the iPod, and the fact that, anyone could record something, upload it, and the world could hear it, I thought was an amazing democratization of knowledge. And if you think back over history, two geniuses in different towns might never meet, and that would slow down innovation and progress. But now, one of the things that makes me so optimistic about the future is simply that knowledge is now accessible to more people in the world than ever before for free. I mean, there's things like Khan Academy, Wikipedia.
Yeah.
If anything, this pandemic, I think, is going to call into question the value of higher education. Not the value of it, but the cost of it. Because,
the benefits of it.
If you can get a degree by taking your last semester in your house, then do I need to go to the buildings? And so you'll split the knowledge from the social benefits, and it'll again lead to more and more people being educated. So I think it's a wonderful thing for the world. All voices have a chance to be heard, and those that have value will have more listeners. Those that don't. When I started this, my hope was that I could get 70% of my family members to listen in. And I'm still not quite there. So we'll see.
All right. Well, there's time. There's time.
Yeah,
and there's hope.
Time. That's what we'll work toward, Kerry.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. At podcasting, I've met different people from all over the world, amazing people, really incredible experiences that I would have never gotten otherwise. And this new media has just opened up the world and made it a lot smaller place for all of us, all of you out there. So I should say there's a website you can go to, right, Val? What's our website?
Well, I wouldn't. Our website is terrible. You could go to it.
You can listen to episodes there.
It's www.thevalueguys.com. But if you go to iTunes and type in The Value Guys, or I think we're on Spotify now, but the whole backlog of podcasts is on iTunes going back to, I think, 2006. And it's out there on iTunes or our website, either one, Terry.
All right, and you just put out a new episode. Have several new episodes out. One came out 2 days ago. I didn't even have a chance to listen to it yet because I heard a test episode and I said, "Oh,
well,
okay."
We did. Again, I assume nobody. We had a few listeners writing in, going, bring back the show. I had all these other issues I was talking about, including getting Mo back on land. et cetera. And so finally, we did sort of a test show, a little teaser to see if anyone cared other than our parents or what have you. And a few people did. And so we did one show and we got a lot of people writing in. And so we did a second one I posted a couple of days ago, and we're going to try to do it once a week, maybe Friday night or Sunday, something like that. So people have a fresh episode on Mondays.
And it's also better. My advice to you on that is do it on Fridays, because then you can drink more. Don't have to worry about getting up the next morning for work.
Well, that we already thought of that. So Friday is in the lead.
You got to do what's going to be best for the show here.
Well, I pointed out to Mo, I said, look, if we do it when we're not drinking, I mean, we don't want to become professors. Like now you just are in a school. I mean, part of the fun for us is, again, it's Friday. We have long weeks, as you might imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Markets have been crazy. So by the time you get to Friday, you really want to sit down and have fun. And, that's a good time for us to, lay back and record something without having to worry about Monday. Because when Monday comes, we are kind of busy.
Yeah. That's all encompassing. I know Wall Streeters are very intense, totally work-centric, work-focused, and you just don't have time for levity and increased alcohol consumption.
Well, in my case, that's true. But in Mo's case, we're competing with his leisure time. And I think also, in all honesty, Mo is a nationally ranked bicyclist. So he trains constantly. And so we're competing with that. For reasons I don't understand, Kerry, Mo would rather ride a bike than do this.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't see the attraction there.
That's Mo. I can't have you. But he does have a nice bar for Fridays. So we'll see.
All right.
If we can get that into better use now. I think we will.
I think we're good. And hey, thank you for coming back. There was definitely a void in my life. Not being married anymore. I need all the entertainment alternatives and options that one can possibly find in life. I probably needed them more back then, but I just didn't know it. And so now I have another entertainment option available to me. I never miss an episode. I probably listen to 200 or so of those episodes out of your 300. Oh my goodness,
that's amazing. Well, you may be our biggest fan then, Kerry.
I probably am. And, if you're giving out free prizes, I'm very available.
Well, we could have a lottery for our very best stock idea. And I'm sure that would be so easy to get through the compliance department.
I can only imagine. And that's something, those disclosures are entertaining and funny, but they have to be done, because otherwise there will be some idiot who says, well, I lost $1,000 on Widget Co. because of your recommendation, so you should pay me, right?
Yeah, that happens. And it's disclosed on FINRA. So if you have, one of the things about our industry that I think, other industries could take note of is if you even have one complaint against you, which could be false, right? Then you're going to have trouble getting a job. So it's an industry that does not mess around for 1 second with, consumer protection. And some of the stuff they're talking about with banks and other professions. And, we've been on the front end of that for some time. And I guess as an industry member, I'm proud of that. So, but yeah, we have to be very careful. And that's why the disclaimers are funny, but they're true. We do not have your best interests in mind. And again, I would say this, I actually do. When I give a stock recommendation, I'm absolutely sincere about my belief that it'd be a good one. But people should know, if they do the analysis on any of their favorite stock pickers, half the stocks people pick go down. And the one thing that makes people good are the ones that go up a little more than the ones that go down. And so, yes, you got to be very careful with that from my perch. But I think we're through that, Kerry. I think the disclosures that I'm heavily drinking and that I am a greedy bastard should be sufficient. That's what I'm hoping.
All right. Well, we'll always keep that in mind from now on. Hey, what do you usually drink? Just one last question. What are you usually drinking when you're drinking there? Do you have a favorite?
Well, when Mo and I were in the shop, he would bring from his collection a favorite beverage, which was usually a single malt scotch, as you might picture Mo. That's what he drinks. In my case, it's I would usually drink whatever Mo was bringing. So as you can see, I'm at a little bit of a loss. But if it's just up to me, like here on this call, Kerry, it would be just a nice red wine. We had a value guy named Otto Favor.
I remember Otto.
Yeah, and Otto is alive and well, and he's at a particular firm that again does have compliance issues, but he's got a particular expertise in wine. So we might bring him back just to have that beginning of the show with an expert, because I don't know really anything about wine, and I go by the label mainly. If they've spent time on that, I think it must be good. But Otto is an expert, and Mo is an expert on single malt. So I think we're kind of covered between those two. That's what I'm hoping.
But what did Vern used to drink? Vern Value.
Well, Vern and I we were mixed drinks guys, and we had a period. There are some shows from Vern's cabin.
I know. I remember the cabin. Yes.
We would be drinking. I think we would largely do martinis. And those were some of the shows that my wife said we just simply could not put out. So when you talk about a lottery, Kerry, one of the things you could do is simply raffle off those old shows. They truly weren't ready for prime
they were
time,
gems. They were true gems. Please.
Those were so much fun. I should try to get back in touch with Vern. If he's listening, he should give me a call. He's retired, I think. I've sort of lost track of Vern.
Vern was good. Now, all of your cohorts were really good, but it's hard to find good help, you know?
Well, given what I'm paying them, it's very hard.
Yeah, it's even harder. Oh, man. Yeah, if you want laughs, you want to enjoy yourself and really learn a couple things about companies and stocks, then thevalueguys.com. But don't look there because shows aren't up to date.
Ugly.
Go to iTunes, put in The Value Guys, and you will find them. Hey, questions or comments, email me, kl@kerrylutz.com, Twitter feeds @KerryLutz, Facebook page, Financial Survival Network, and of course our website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Val, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.
Okay, thanks so much. Goodbye, everybody.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.